The red carpet at a major Hollywood premiere is a machine designed for one purpose: to celebrate the famous. The lights, the cameras, the shouting reporters, it's a well-oiled ritual where every second is scheduled, and every interaction is calculated. But on one cold December night in 2008, at the premiere of his film Gran Torino, Clint Eastwood looked past all that machinery and saw something real. What he did next didn't just break the protocol, it revealed a truth about the man behind the legend that no interview ever could. The venue was the Warner Brothers lot in Burbank, buzzing with the elite energy of a landmark event. Clint Eastwood, at 78 years old, had hinted this might be his final performance. The air wasn't just filled with excitement, it was thick with a sense of history, a farewell to an icon. Every major director, actor, and executive had come to pay respects. The carpet itself was a river of flashbulbs and microphones, a 200-foot gauntlet of adulation. Clint moved through it with his trademark quiet stoicism, a figure of immense gravity in a simple black suit, acknowledging the frenzy with a practiced, subdued grace. For 40 minutes, he was the perfect center of the Hollywood universe. But outside the gleaming bubble of that universe, pressed against a metal barrier at the very back of the permitted area, a man named James Patterson sat in a wheelchair. At 64, the Vietnam War had aged him 2 decades beyond his years, claiming his legs in 1971 and slowly eroding much of what came after. He lived in a shared room at a VA facility, his world narrowed by disability checks and phantom pains. His one unwavering escape, his lifeline, was the cinema of Clint Eastwood, particularly the stories of hardened, broken men wrestling with their past. The character of Walt Kowalski in Gran Torino, a Korean War veteran simmering with rage and regret, felt less like a fictional creation to James and more like a portrait he'd been waiting his whole life to see. For him, this premiere wasn't a glamorous party, it was the closest he could get to a moment of profound recognition. His daughter Lisa, who had scrimped and saved to rent an accessible van for this single night, stood beside him. They knew they couldn't get in. Their hope, fragile and desperate, was simply to catch a distant glimpse of Eastwood, to be present in the same atmosphere as the stories that gave James a reason to keep fighting. They'd been there for 6 hours, relegated to the shadows by security, spectators to a spectacle they could hear but barely see. When the crowd's roar signaled Clint's arrival, James strained, but all he could see were the backs of strangers and the halo of distant lights. The crushing reality of his isolation, of being so near yet utterly invisible in the shadow of this celebration, finally broke him. A single, quiet tear traced a path down his withered cheek, a silent surrender to a lifetime of being overlooked. At that exact moment, 50 feet away in the heart of the glare, Clint Eastwood was dissecting the themes of his film for an Entertainment Tonight reporter. He spoke of Walt Kowalski's arc, of confronting demons, and of seeking redemption in twilight years. Then, his eyes tracking past the interviewer's shoulder, through a temporary part in the sea of tuxedos, he saw it. A wheelchair. A worn military jacket. The unmistakable, shuddering posture of a man crying. In an instant, the abstract theme of his movie collided with a concrete human reality. Without a word of explanation, Clint Eastwood turned his back on the camera, the reporter, and the entire apparatus of the premiere, and began walking with quiet determination away from the lights, toward the darkness at the edge of the crowd. Confusion rippled through the press line. Security tensed. The orchestrated event ground to a bewildered halt as one of the most famous men in the world vaulted over a metal barrier to kneel beside a wheelchair. The conversation that followed was simple, stripped of all Hollywood pretense. "Sir," Clint said, his voice a low rasp that cut through the noise. "You're a veteran, aren't you?" James Patterson, faced with the sudden, impossible presence of his hero, could only nod. "Vietnam?" Clint asked, his tone softening. When James confirmed he was a Marine, Clint did something extraordinary. He thanked him. Not as a celebrity to a fan, but as one man to another for a debt that could never be repaid. It was a gesture of respect so genuine it unleashed the emotion James had been holding back for decades. But Clint wasn't finished. He learned they had been waiting since afternoon. He learned James had never seen the film. In that moment, Clint Eastwood made a directorial decision for real life. He summoned the film's producer and issued calm, irrevocable instructions: the premiere would be delayed. James Patterson would watch Gran Torino tonight, from the front row, and Clint would sit beside him. The message was undeniable: this story, born from the experiences of men like James, would now be witnessed by one. What followed was a scene of pure, unscripted power. Clint Eastwood personally pushed James Patterson's wheelchair up the famed red carpet, transforming the veteran from an invisible observer into the guest of honor. He paused before entering the theater to address the stunned assembly of celebrities. "This is James Patterson," he announced with that familiar gravelly authority. "He served in Vietnam. He's seen things none of us have seen, sacrificed things none of us have sacrificed. And tonight, he's watching this movie from the front row. Because if anyone deserves to see a story about a veteran finding peace, it's an actual veteran who's been searching for it for 40 years. The applause that followed was not polite. It was a thunderous, emotional acknowledgement that they were all witnessing something more important than a movie premiere. For the next 2 hours, Clint watched James watch the film. He saw the flinches, the nods of understanding, the tears during the climax. When the credits rolled, Clint turned to him and asked simply for his verdict. James, eyes red-rimmed, replied, "That was me. That was my whole life. But the ending gave me something I didn't know I needed." When Clint asked what that was, James whispered a single word that defined everything about that night: hope. The story could have ended there as a beautiful, one-night anomaly. But for Clint Eastwood, the real action started after the cameras stopped flashing. He quietly instructed his producer to investigate James's living conditions, his medical care, his needs. He established a private fund to secure James a proper apartment, cover medical gaps, and even help him find purposeful work. This wasn't public charity, it was a private commitment. And it didn't stop with one man. Moved by the encounter, Clint began working with VA organizations to identify other James Pattersons, veterans falling through the cracks of the system. A quiet, sustained assistance program was born, funded by residuals from the very film that brought them together. The legacy of that night is measured in more than a viral moment. It's in the over 3,000 veterans in Los Angeles who received help because of the program that grew from that encounter. It's in the unofficial motto that guides its workers: nobody waits in the back anymore. James Patterson lived 7 more years, years of reconnection and purpose, forever changed by the night a star saw him not as a fan in the shadows, but as a man who mattered. Clint Eastwood, when reflecting on Gran Torino's success, often circles back to that delayed premiere. The film earned accolades and millions, but its truest, most valuable impact was a reminder that real redemption isn't something that only happens on screen. Sometimes, it happens when someone with every reason to stay in the spotlight makes the choice to walk toward the darkness and bring someone back into the light. The ultimate lesson of that evening was a simple one: character isn't defined by how you perform when all eyes are on you, but by what you do when you think no one is watching, and you see someone who needs to be seen.